All right, today I'm going to take you through a history of the UFC's lightweight division. Certainly one of the hardest belts to capture in all of combat sports. Some of the biggest stars and some of the craziest history. I'm telling you, when you go through the UFC lightweight division from start to bottom, there's a lot of things you wouldn't have known. Like, for example, it used to be known as the bantamweight division. Then for a while, it didn't even exist. We've seen champions stripped because they failed drug tests.
They're all on steroids.
Only weight I care about. Steroids? What are you talking about?
We've seen champions walk away because of contractual disputes. We've seen some of the champions throwing dollies at buses. We've seen brawls erupt. We've seen the biggest pay-per-view in UFC history, all in the lightweight division. And of course, this weekend at UFC 311, the lightweight strap is once again on the line. We've had 3 champions defend the belt on 3 occasions. They are called Khabib Nurmagomedov, BJ Penn, and Benson Henderson, and Islam Makhachev. So that's 4. And if he gets the job done this weekend against Arman Tsarukyan, he will make history as the only person to defend the belt 4 times. So let's get on with the history lesson. The UFC's first ever lightweight champion was Jens Pulver, who defeated Khabib Nurmagomedov at UFC 30 way back in 2001. He beat him by decision to win the inaugural lightweight championship. From there, Jens Pulver went on to defeat Dennis Holman by decision UFC 33, and he beat BJ Penn, the prodigy, at UFC 35 in 2002. But Jens Pulver vacated the belt due to a contractual dispute in 2002. So the UFC, they came up with the idea of a 4-man tournament. In that tournament was BJ Penn, Matt Serra, Khabib Nurmagomedov, and Dean Thomas. So in the first round, BJ defeats Matt Serra by decision, and Khabib Nurmagomedov defeated Dean Thomas via decision also. That went down at UFC 39. In the finals, BJ Penn and Khabib Nurmagomedov, they fought to a draw at UFC 41, 2003. And due to this draw, the lightweight division did not have a champion from 2003 to 2006. So, fast forward a little bit, 2006, Sean the Muscle Shark Sherk, he steps in to fight Kenny Florian. He went on to win that fight via decision, and he won the vacant belt. That went down at UFC 64 when the UFC events used to have a name, and UFC 64 was called Unstoppable. Kind of like this YouTube channel. Remember, members videos dropping every single day. So, Sean Sherk defeated Kenny Florian at 64, unstoppable as I said, and he was unstoppable against Hermes Franca, who we beat by a decision at UFC 73. However, Sean Sherk, the dirty little cheating bastard, he was stripped of the belt because he failed the post-fight drug test. To be fair, so did his opponent, Hermes Franca. All right, fast forward to 2008, and BJ Penn steps up, one of the daddies of the lightweight division, to take on Joe Daddy Stevenson for the vacant belt at UFC 80 in Newcastle, England. Hawaii man. Now, he beats Joe Stevenson. It was a beautiful beatdown. Just beat him to a pulp. He was covered in blood, choked him out at UFC 80. Then he defends again against Sean Sherk, knocks out the Muscle Shark with a beautiful flying knee, UFC 84. Takes on Kenny Florian, chokes him out this time at UFC 101, 2009, and then, of course, gets a doctor stoppage over Diego the Nightmare Sanchez at UFC 107. A legendary run for BJ Penn, but all good things must come to an end. So, let's fast forward, UFC 112. 2010, the UFC's first time visiting Abu Dhabi. BJ Penn this time took on Frankie Edgar. Now, Frankie Edgar got the job done. He beat him via decision that shocked the world. And also, what else shocked the world? The main event. Anderson Silva took on Damian Maia, and the man was just messing around, helping him up off the floor, just mocking him, being silly, just kind of taking the piss, as we say in England. But Frankie Edgar and BJ Penn, they would go at it again. They would rematch at UFC 118, and once again, Frankie Edgar got the job done via decision. So Frankie Edgar's the man, the show must go on, and the next opponent up is Gray Maynard. Now, he ends up going to a draw with Gray Maynard at UFC 125 2011, so they rematched, and then this time he's victorious. He knocks out Gray Maynard to defend the belt at UFC 136 2011. Next up, Benson Smooth Henderson. He went on to beat Frankie Edgar via decision at UFC 144. He defeats Frankie again because he got an automatic rematch, this time also via decision, and then Benson Henderson went on quite the legendary run. The next time Benson Henderson steps into the cage, he takes on somebody that will go on to become an absolute global superstar. but he wasn't back then. He had a cult following, and his name was Nate Diaz.
I'm not surprised.
Benson Henderson versus Nate Diaz went down on Big Fox, okay? UFC on Fox 5, free TV for the whole of America to watch. He defeats him by a decision, and he also defeated Gilbert Melendez by a decision. UFC on Fox 7. So a massive platform for the lightweight champion. So the next man to contend for the lightweight belt was Anthony Pettis. Now let's remember, Anthony Showtime Pettis was doing big things in the WEC. He comes over to the UFC. He takes on Benson Henderson, beats him by armbar in the first round, UFC 164 in 2013, and then he goes out and chokes out Gilbert Melendez via a guillotine choke at UFC 181. Now, Anthony Pettis absolutely blew up. The man became a huge superstar. This is a man that was on the cover of a Wheaties box out here in America. He was on every magazine. He was a global sensation. Now, the next man up for the job, Rafael dos Anjos. He went out, he challenged Anthony Pettis. He beat him by a decision at UFC 185, and he had one singular title defense against Donald Cowboy Cerrone. A beautiful body kick. UFC on Fox 17, again, a massive platform. Now, steps up Eddie Alvarez. He's taking on the champ, Rafael dos Anjos. Eddie Alvarez dispatched of Rafael dos Anjos in the very first round by a TKO. That went down on a fight night in 2016. And you all know what's coming next. Of course,
Surprise, surprise!
the featherweight champion of the world, the notorious one, Conor McGregor, steps up a weight class, takes on Eddie Alvarez, UFC 205, Madison Square Garden, one of the biggest events that the sport has ever seen. And of course, Conor McGregor did what he said he was going to do. He went out there and he just put an absolute beat down on Eddie Alvarez, one of his best performances, hardly got touched, looked in control the entire time, and of course, got a TKO in the second round. And of course, he said,
I'd like to take this chance to apologize to absolutely nobody. The double champ does what the he wants.
but it wasn't the start of a legendary run for Conor McGregor. Of course, he went on to box Floyd Mayweather in the money fight. And because of his inactivity, he was stripped of the featherweight title and he was stripped of the lightweight title. So what did they do? They had a vacant title. So Tony Ferguson steps up and takes on Kevin Lee. Kevin Lee went out there, started the fight really well, put a beat down on Tony Ferguson. But Tony Ferguson weathered the storm and came back and won via triangle choke in the third round at UFC 216, 2017. So as we said, Conor McGregor was stripped because of inactivity, and Tony Ferguson was also stripped because of inactivity due to an injury. After a crazy fight week with multiple changed opponents, we know what's coming now. Khabib Nurmagomedov steps up. He was supposed to fight Tony Ferguson. That match was made, I don't know, 4 or 5 times. As we know, Tony Ferguson tripped up on a cable at the Fox Studios. One reason for why the fight didn't go ahead. So then they had to rally around. At one point, it was going to be Max Holloway. Then it was going to be Paul Felder.
I was the only one that weekend who happened to weigh 155 pounds. Al weighed 156 pounds. And I'm trying my absolute best. I got my management on it. We're like, come on. I made the weight. The commission takes me out of it, saying I'm not ranked high enough. I was so...
The bastards!
So they went through a variety of opponents and they settled on Al Iaquinta. Al Iaquinta, to be fair, on very short notice, did pretty well against Khabib Nurmagomedov, but of course he didn't win. Khabib Nurmagomedov was now the champion, Dagestan's first champ in the UFC, and it was the start of a legendary run for the Eagle. Moving on next, we get to UFC 229, the biggest pay-per-view in UFC history, and by all accounts, a fight that sold around 2.2 million pay-per-view buys. Conor McGregor versus Khabib Nurmagomedov. The build-up to this one was absolutely legendary. Conor flew in from Ireland on his private jet, ran up to the Barclays Center where the weigh-ins were happening, picked up a dolly, threw it at the bus. It was promotional gold. In terms of trying to sell a fight, you had a real situation like that happen. Of course, the media ate this stuff up and it helped sell the fight. As I said, the biggest pay-per-view that the UFC has ever put on. Now, as we know, Conor McGregor was defeated in the 4th round and he said to Khabib, hey, it's only business. But nobody told Khabib Nurmagomedov. He took this one very, very personally. We saw what happened. He jumps over the top of the octagon, drop kicks Dylan Dennis in the face, and then a massive brawl ensued. Now, due to Khabib not being able to defend his belt because of the post-fight brawl with McGregor, Dustin Poirier got a shot against Max Holloway, which was a rematch for a vacant title. Now, due to Khabib being able to defend his title due to the post-fight brawl with McGregor, they brought in an interim title. Max Holloway fought Dustin Poirier in his UFC debut. Now they were going to rematch years later. UFC 236, and of course Dustin Poirier beats Max Holloway by a decision and becomes the interim champ. And of course, when you've got an undisputed and you've got an interim, what do? You unify the belts most of the time. So Khabib goes on, he fights Dustin Poirier, he beats him by a rear naked choke at UFC 242. But we got to remember, round the corner, it's 2020. COVID goes down, an absolute bunch of shit hits the fan. People can't travel, and one of those people that couldn't was Khabib. He was unable to travel, and another interim title is set between Justin Gaethje and El Kukui, Tony Ferguson.
But tonight's winner of this interim title fight is likely getting that crack.
Justin goes out there, puts an absolute beat down on Tony Ferguson. He's wobbling all over the place. He's taking shots. Tony wouldn't go down. He continued to try and fight, so the referee saved him from any more damage in the 5th round. UFC 249, Jacksonville, Florida. But Khabib, all right, eventually the world saw sense. Khabib was able to travel and he was able to unify the title once again. This time went up against Justin Gaethje, the human highlight reel. Went out there, took a few leg kicks in the 1st round, but he got him down in the 2nd round, won via triangle choke. Apparently choked him out via triangle because his father was in the audience and he took pity on him. That's what Khabib said after the fight. And of course, that went down on Yas Island, Abu Dhabi, UFC 254. And of course, as we know, Khabib Nurmagomedov walked away from the sport. His father had passed away and he promised his mother that he wasn't going to continue to fight, and he stuck to his word. A legendary career for one of the biggest legends in the fight game. So we've got another vacant belt once again. So what did he do? Charles Oliveira is reborn at lightweight. He takes on Michael Chandler, who just came over from Bellator. He knocked out Dan Hooker, so he gets a title shot against Charles Oliveira. They go back and forth. Charles Oliveira gets the TKO in the 2nd round to win the vacant title at UFC 262. Now, Charles Oliveira's had a legendary career. He's got the most bonuses. He's got the most submissions. He's got the most stoppages. He's got the most this, that, and the other. Okay? And he got another one when he took on Dustin Poirier in his first defense at UFC 269. He beat Dustin Poirier by a rear naked choke. And then, of course, he was set to fight Justin Gaethje. But at UFC 274, Charles Oliveira misses weight. So the fight goes ahead. Charles Oliveira wins. Justin Gaethje was defeated, but he was no longer the champ because he didn't make weight. So now steps the current champion, Islam Makhachev. Steps up, he takes on Charles Oliveira. This once again goes down in Abu Dhabi, and he makes short work of Charles Oliveira. Takes him down in the 2nd round at UFC 280 2022. Chokes him out via a rear naked choke. Now, after this one, Alexander Volkanovski, the featherweight champ, says, hold on a minute. I want a piece of the Conor McGregor action. I want to step up a weight class and become a 2-weight division champ. And of course, Alexander Volkanovski had more than earned that shot. He was on an absolute roll at featherweight. So he steps up, he takes on Islam Makhachev. This goes down in Perth, Australia at UFC 284. It is a close fight. It is back and forth. It is razor close. But of course, Islam Makhachev, in the end, he won the fight. But of course, Volkanovski still had designs on the lightweight title. So he goes away, comes back a year later, and he gets another crack at Islam Makhachev. Once again in Abu Dhabi, UFC 294. But this was not a back and forth affair. He went out there and knocked him out cold with a brutal head kick in the very first round. So 2 title defenses in the bag for Islam Makhachev, and the 3rd one came against Dustin Poirier when they went head-to-head at UFC 302. In the 5th round, caught him with a beautiful Bravo choke, and that brings us up to the present day. So, of course, now we have 4 champions that have defended the belt 3 times. Khabib Nurmagomedov, Benson Henderson, BJ Penn, and Islam Makhachev. But this weekend at UFC 311, he rematches Arman Tsarukyan. If he can get the job done, if he is victorious over Arman Tsarukyan, that'll be 4 title defenses, and that will be history in the making. Anyway, thank you for watching my little history lesson of the lightweight division. Subscribe and ring the bell. And if you're not a member to the YouTube channel, you are missing out because we have exclusive content dropping every single day. Thank you.